and I'll say, okay, this is your pay. And then I start down a growth path. Nothing crazy formal, but where I line out, you're going to get to this point, $18 an hour. Get to this point, and that's $20 an hour. Half for them. So they're not sitting wondering, how do I get a raise? How do I become more effective? We're making money now. So how do I buy a $130,000 man lift? You can't do that on this kind of money. So I started bidding jobs as if I already owned that equipment, know what your costs are. And that's what I did. I bust out the Excel spreadsheet and just started going to town. I pulled up all of my expenses and I just funneled that down and refined it until I got to an hourly rate.
There you go.
What does it cost me to operate every hour? That's really helped to guide me going forward.
You figure out how much to pay yourself out of the business.
It is tough. At the beginning, I'd get on site and I'd go, whoa, this sucks. I have completely underbid this.
What would be your top advice to give someone?
So when I was looking for a business opportunity, that is something that I took to heart. There's several ways of doing it. Some people leverage loans and debt, and I'm not one of those guys. I mean, guys don't understand that. They're turning money. They're not building a business. They're building a going out of business. Not what we're doing this for. Our work is too hard and too dangerous just to be paying off a note.
Welcome to Business Owner Conversations. I'm Rebecca. Today we're talking with Brian. He started a tree removal and trimming company a few years ago. He's 5 years in, now has 3 employees and several large pieces of machinery, but still maintains a very low overhead business. Let's see how he did it and what advice he has to share. Remember, while your business industry might be completely different, the principles of business success, leadership, and growth are all the same. Let's see what we can learn from Brian.
Yep. Brian Riley out of Tampa, Florida. And in 2020, I created Canopy Crafters. We do tree trimming and removal. So that's just a 10,000 foot view. Didn't quite get started in my entrepreneurial journey with tree trimming and removal. I kind of fell into it. I started with doing home renovation and remodeling. Though I liked doing those projects, I quickly found out that I didn't have the patience for dealing with a multi-month project and then constantly having new unknowns creep up. When you open a new wall, customer's not happy, and I was like, okay, this is just not for me. So moved on, kept looking around, then I landed in tree work, as odd as that is.
So how did that look? Like, how did tree work fall into your lap?
Well, one of the renovation projects that we were doing was my own, the house that I'm in now, which is not finished. At the time, we had purchased the house and it needed a boatload of work, way more than we had ever anticipated. And some of that was outside. We have a little over an acre, and it was so heavily forested that all of the neighbors, after we bought the place, they didn't even know that there was a house here. It took us about a year to clear and grade and fix the outside just to begin starting on the inside. In that process, I woke up one morning and I was like, okay, I can either keep renting equipment forever or I can just buy one. And so I strapped the cash together and I bought my first man lift and I bought some other equipment. It's like having a friend with a truck, if you're the guy that's got the skid steer and you're the guy that's got the man lift and you're the guy that's got the chainsaws, everybody starts asking you, hey, can you come over here and do this? Hey, can you come? And, I found out with my engineering background that I was pretty good at it right away. Understanding forces, understanding moments, understanding vectors, that's necessary for doing the kind of aerial removals that we end up doing. And I was like, okay, wow, I'm actually a pretty good fit for this. One piece of equipment turned into 2, and now we've got trucks and trailers and the whole 9, and we're out there every week removing and trimming.
So when you bought your first truck, was the goal to just help yourself and maybe help some friends, or was it from the get-go, I think I can turn this into a whole separate business?
No, not necessarily. I didn't have 100%, a scaled tree business in mind. I actually had a very undersized 1500 truck at the time. It's, I don't know, max tow capacity, maybe 8,000, something like that. I said, hold on, before I go and buy a big diesel truck and the whole 9, I need to make sure that, this is something that I kind of want to do. So I outfitted the 1500 truck with a gooseneck in the bed and airbags and all this other stuff. And it hated it doing it, but I bought a gooseneck trailer and I started pulling the man lift around. That man lift was 14,000 pounds. So I was almost near double the capacity of the truck. But yeah, then it started working, and I was like, okay. So then sold that truck, bought an F-350, and now I've got two of them.
That's probably a smart way to do it. I think a lot of people, the first thing they do is they go out and buy a brand new shiny truck and a brand new shiny piece of equipment before they've even proven the business model or figured out if they like it or if they're good at it.
Right. Right. And I think that's a very important thing I've had. Let's say I'm 5 years into this journey, um, of an entrepreneurial journey. And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways that I've learned and then passed on to others that ask me is to just keep the overhead as low as possible, as you're starting and then build up. And so I didn't want a payment. I didn't want, a big truck if it wasn't going to be something that I absolutely needed. Like I had a guy that was, he's telling me, "Oh, I'm going to start a lawn care business and stuff. And I'm going down to the dealership and I'm buying a brand new mower." And I was like, oh, whoa, you know, starting your business with a hefty payment is not a good idea. And you don't even have any clients,
Yeah.
you know? So
Your man lift, did you buy that used or new? And where'd you find that? Is that like Facebook Marketplace or is there a man lift dealership?
the time that I bought it was just post COVID and I was looking around and I said, okay, used, is the route because I'd never bought a new piece of equipment. At the time, it was one of the purchases that I said, okay, hold on. I'm going to be trusting my life in this piece of equipment or somebody else's. And B, I want it to work. I want it to work every single day. That is one of the benefits typically of a new piece of equipment compared to a used one, that you should have better reliability. And I say should because that's not always the case. I didn't quite have the customer base yet to demand such a piece of equipment, but I was looking for used, looking for used, looking for used, and the market was everything was just going so quickly that at the end of 22, somebody backed out of an order on a new one. So yeah, I ended up with a new $130,000 piece of equipment, and I didn't have to wait for it. So the wait time back then was like 6 to 9 months.
So what did you do for the 2 years prior before you bought that?
It was the one that I bought for the house.
Oh, okay.
I was using that.
Okay.
More of like a dinosaur, if you will, compared to what we have now.
I guess I didn't think about that part. Like you're putting your life in the hands of that piece of equipment.
Yeah. Yeah, it is there's not a lot of jobs where that is the case, but you start getting into this heavy equipment, blue collar work, and yeah, your your life can definitely be at risk and you don't want to be chancing that on a piece of equipment.
So to get started, what all did you have to buy? You retrofitted your truck. You had the man lift.
Yeah, I started small. Um Following that same principle of not having too much overhead, buying things almost, except for the man lift. Of course, I bought that a little bit ahead of schedule, but everything else was kind of like, okay, we need something. We need another whatever. We need to buy this before I pulled the trigger on it. So yeah, it was just truck, trailer, man lift, and I had no way of getting the debris off site, so I was having to pay somebody to come get the debris. And then I said, okay, I'm doing enough jobs. Now I need a dump trailer. So I bought a dump trailer. And then you need to load the dump trailer. So I bought a skid steer to load the dump trailer. But, back then, sometimes I was by myself because we'll probably get there, but employees are tough. And in this line of work, it's even tougher to find somebody that's so there were a lot of days, when I was starting out, it was just me. I would go with the man lift. I'd unload it myself. I'd do all the work myself. I'd load it back up. I'd go home. I'd drop it off. I'd pick up the dump trailer with the skid steer in it. I'd go to site. I'd unload the skid steer, load all the debris in the dump trailer. I'd drive that to the dump, come back and pick up the skid steer and go home. It was terrible, but I got it done. And then with that, I just had a reputation that was following me, more and more clientele kind of following and finding out through word of mouth. And it was like, okay, enough of this. I need somebody with me all the time. And that was my first employee somewhere in 22, early 23, something like that.
How did you find that employee? Was it someone you knew or was it a job posting?
It was a friend of mine, his son.
Mm.
Um, And I said, uh, I've kind of heard a lot of horror stories of hiring out of the industry, if you will. Um, and so I said, you know what? I'll take somebody fresh, 18, and that way he he will only know what I know. He doesn't know anything else. So pros and cons with that, of course, is a very steep learning curve. Taking somebody that's never held a chainsaw to making them functional on site. But
I think we almost
yeah,
prefer hiring people with no experience because then you can teach them exactly what you want done and how they want it done versus people
yep,
with experience in other areas. They come in thinking they know it all and aren't willing to change what they know, or they've already learned bad habits that you can't ever fix or correct.
right. And in fairness, especially in hard blue collar labor, the older they are, the more baggage that's going to come with that. Um, and so that starts bleeding over from home life into work, and it disrupts the crew. And yeah. So personally, would prefer somebody with less experience that's reliable. They're going to show up on time. They're honest. They don't have a drug problem. It's something like that. They have a vehicle. They have a clean driver's license. Everything else I can fix.
How did you figure out how to pay your first employee?
Well, he had no experience, and so I said, okay, $15 an hour, good start. And we're just going to go from there. And I didn't know it at the time. I know it now. But what I do is I'll do like a 2 week trial period, 2 to 3 weeks, depending on this person's experience or lack thereof. And I'll say, okay, 2, 3 weeks, this is your pay. And then I start down a growth path, nothing crazy formal, but something where I line out like, okay, you're going to get to this point and that's $18 an hour. We're gonna get to this point, and that's $20 an hour. You're driving for me $22, whatever. And so just put a path for them, so they're not sitting out there in no man's land, wondering like, how do I get a raise? How do I make how do I make more money? How do I become more effective? That way they know what they're doing. Because I've also seen, in the past where I give somebody a raise and they're like, wow, that's great. And all that wears off in 1 to 2 weeks, and they're back to exactly what they were doing before. So
Mhm.
the raise is not a long-term fix.
How long did it take you to figure out that growth path system?
I don't know, maybe a year or two, just by kind of listening to some stuff online and maybe reading a little book here and there, just trying to take nuggets from all these different sources of information, because really there's so much information out there. You really got to take it, with a grain of salt of what's actually useful.
Yes, exactly. So how many employees do you have now?
3.
Are they all similar leveled, or are some more like managers, some more going out and getting new business? Do they have different roles, or is it all the same?
They're all pretty much the same with varying experience levels, but not too great. And so that's kind of my next move, is to figure out how to replace myself on site. Right now, I've kind of coined the term that I'm being run by the business, not running the business.
Mhm.
I'm the guy that has to take all the phone calls. I'm the guy that has to screen the customers. I'm the guy that has to go out and do the quotes. I'm the guy who has to write the estimates. And then I'm the guy that has to get everybody together in the morning, tell them the plan. We all drive to site. If it's a critical job or something that requires a lot of expertise off the ground, in the aerial work, it's me. So I'm doing all of that, fielding the calls during the day, making sure the job runs smoothly, getting the debris, to the dump in the afternoon, writing quotes in the evening. It's been a lot.
Because
It's been a lot
theoretically, if you
recently.
could find someone to mimic what you're doing, that's how you branch out into having then two crews and then can double the jobs and double the income, theoretically.
Well, theoretically, yes. Um, but I think we're not to the point yet to where I would want two crews. I don't have the customer base yet to support two crews, A. And B, I'm close enough with other tree companies that are not direct competitors, if you will. They're close, but they don't mind sharing information with me. So I have a friend that's, let's say, off to the east. They have one crew, 4 guys, and they're doing consistently north of 1 million a year. They also do storm work. So they chase storms, and that can generate up to another million a year. So between 1 and 2 million a year, depending on storm season. Um,
Is store money big
and
because
there's
it's government money?
not necessarily. Um, it's hours, risk, equipment. You're taking guys away from their home, so you're paying them 1.5 to 2 times rate. There is no going home, so you're working 7 days a week. Like, let's say there's a tree inside of a house, it's fallen, it's broken through the roof, and in a day it's gonna rain. You gotta get that tree out of there. So you can tarp the roof and then not make sure that the whole inside of the house and all their contents don't get rained on and ruined and mold and mildew and all that mitigation. So you have to work quickly. And anytime you're working quickly with this much weight, things can happen.
Mhm.
So you have to be very skilled at what you're doing, and that comes at a cost. A lot of these guys are running around with cranes upwards of $1 million in order to do this work. So I've got another friend. He is just off to the west of me, and they do between 1.2 and $1.4 million a year, and it's 4 guys. It's him. He's doing the quoting and estimating, and he's got 4 guys working for him, and they are a machine. They're a unit. He's got 2 guys that are very skilled and 2 guys that are a little bit less skilled.
Mm.
And kind of seeing that, I've been using these guys as like a path. How do I get there? So taking it from where I am now to that 1.2 to 1.4 million mark, I know is very possible within the next, let's say, 2 years, as long as I follow the path.
Mhm.
So yeah, at that point, then you kind of come up against a wall because this company B, let's say, that's off to the west of me, they're very refined. Been doing it for years. If I had to guess, they're kind of up against the wall though with their efficiency. They've kind of maxed it out. 4 guys, the equipment that they have. So they would really have to rebuild that again from scratch with a second crew. You need very skilled guys at the top of the crew in order to make it work.
Mhm. So both your east and your west friends, they both just have one crew?
Yeah, as far as I know. I mean, I know as a matter of fact for the guys off to the west of me, but the guys off to the east of me, I think they might have branched out into another crew. I've got a guy that I chat with on Instagram. They tried to branch out into multi crews and it didn't work. I think they spread themselves too thin.
So when you go to quote a job, are you assessing the amount of time that it takes? Is it mostly a time factor, or like how do you know if something's a $1,000 job or a $10,000 job or more?
It's a combination of time and risk. We carry $2 million in general liability coverage, which is more than enough. I mean, it covers us for our commercial jobs that we do, but in case something were to happen, because I like to say with tree work, I know 95% of what's going to happen at any given time, but there's always 5% of you couldn't see something. You didn't see that there were frays inside the rope, something like that, to where something breaks and personal property gets destroyed or damaged. It hasn't happened to us, but it can. So we treat every project, where we're doing a removal over a home or something like that. We treat it as if, okay, what would happen if it did go wrong? There's definite cost to that, and so I factor that in, and then pretty much everything else does come down to time. How long is it going to take? The only other major factor in a project is all the debris generated. So when you look at a tree, you have to have a good understanding of how much debris is there when it's on the ground. How are you going to get it out? Where is it going? There are places around the states that are just absolutely dead zones for dropping debris legally. And so that's why you'll see on the side of the road sometimes debris or trash is because either they're too lazy or cheap to do it properly, or there's just nowhere around. And so whenever I go to quote somewhere that it's a little bit further out or I haven't worked there in a while, I got to figure out where there is to dump and how much it costs. And then I have to back feed that into the quote.
Was it a learning curve to figure out how to accurately quote? Like at the beginning where you're like, oh man, I definitely way underquoted that and we just lost money, or
Well, to an extent, at the beginning, I just did everything off of my low costs. Like I didn't have a whole lot of overhead. So I pretty much couldn't lose as long as we were safe, and careful. Long as there was no incidents, there's no problem. We're gonna make money. But then I started kind of changing to like, we're making money now, sustaining the stuff that we have, but how do I buy $130,000 man lift? You can't do that on this kind of money. So I started bidding jobs as if I already owned that equipment
Mhm.
and had a payment for it. So what is going to be my monthly payment on this piece of equipment if I don't have the outright cash to buy it? Or how long is it going to take me to generate the cash to buy this thing outright? So then I start factoring that into all my jobs. And I was kind of feeling very unsure because sometimes I'd say 1400 for a job, let's say, and somebody would just like laugh in my face. Like that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. And be like, okay, I thought that was a fair price, but yeah, see ya. And then say for a very similar job, 1400, and they'd be like, when can you do it? I'm like, what? Hold on. I'm so confused. I have no idea. Um, it's still the same 1400, you know, just a different person. And so I said, I really got to figure out how to price things accurately. And if you look at, anybody else in the blue collar industry, they'll tell you the same thing, which is know what your costs are. And that's what I did. With my engineering background, I bust out the Excel spreadsheet and just started going to town. I pulled up all of my expenses and I put an estimated cost for myself and my hourly, my employees' hourly, all of our insurances, gas, perceived maintenance for all the equipment. And I just funneled that down and refined it until I got to an hourly rate.
There you go.
What does it cost me to operate every hour? That's really helped to guide me going forward.
Especially if all your competitors are have loans on $1,000,000 trucks, and if you're bidding without the overhead in there, you're gonna be way low. But also
Uh-huh.
$1,400, it definitely depends on finding the right clientele. $1,400 is pocket change to some people, other people, it's, you know, their life
Right.
savings. It kinda probably funneling to find the right clientele is important too. Are most of your customers repeat customers or neighbors of customers that you already had?
Most of my customers are new because let's say we're 5 years into this journey. And in the last three, I've really pushed the tree work hard. And so when we do a removal, that's it. That tree's gone. It's never coming back. So that's the end of that pipeline. Now maybe they need another tree removed down the road, but we're not doing repeat business. You can't put that
Right.
on a schedule of, hey, can I come remove another tree for you in 1 year? Doesn't happen. And so for trimming, because we do push a very comprehensive approach to trimming, that a customer of ours shouldn't have to call us for 3 years. I try to make the experience, if you will, memorable enough to where they will call us back or they will tell somebody. I try to engage them with leaving a review. So it's a little bit harder to forget our name. Um, Yeah, so it's pretty much new, almost a constant turnover. Two things that, I've changed recently are branding. So all the trucks, all the trailers, everything is now wrapped.
Mm.
It's all got Canopy Crafters on it, which was ironic because one of our semi trucks is older. And the day after we wrapped it, the guy was like, "All your equipment is so nice, and you got all these new trucks." And I'm like, yeah, you're right. But they look at that and they really do appreciate that. Like our man left, our centerpiece, if you will, it's a late 22, early 23 model. Looks brand new. We wash it.
Mhm.
I can't tell you how many compliments we've had on that. And so when people see us clean cut, well spoken, and then the job goes very smoothly, they can't help but say something to somebody about
Mhm.
that. And I think that really has helped our reputation. So we got the wraps and we just picked up using Jobber as a software. It's very geared towards blue collar work. And in that, there are opportunities to integrate your reviews with your estimates. So when I send an estimate out now, when they're reading through the estimate, right at the bottom is 5-star reviews. So they get to read from other previous customers of like, well, okay, what are they saying about Candy Craft? So they've already seen me, they've already talked with me, and now they get to see the number. And right below that is the justification. Why are you going to go with us? And these people are going to tell you why. And that's really cool. There's also other ways of marketing through there. You can send out email blasts and all the other stuff if you've paid for that functionality. And so we're just on the precipice of starting to use some new things to generate new clientele.
Well, how do you figure out how much to pay yourself out of the business? Like, do you take a straight percentage? Do you pay yourself what you need to, and then the rest goes back into the business?
It's an interesting question. Um, Yeah. The ability to take an entrepreneurial route for me started before college. I was pretty decent managing my money, and I worked for 8 years as a mechanical engineer and worked really hard, did a lot of travel, and saved a lot of money. And so I was able to pay for my wife to go through and get her degree as a physician assistant. After that, she was able to work and I was able to build the business. It kind of freed me up to do that, freed me up for the opportunity to do something because we had savings and she was in a well-paying job, well-paying position. And so from that, I said, okay, great. Now I don't have to pay myself anything and I can just stack capital as much as I can. I'm going to save again, comes back to the low overhead. And so since then, because of that, like I have a perceived cost on the business, but I don't take it per se. Ironically, I pay myself $400 a week. I do that because I am an S corp now. I started out as a sole proprietor LLC, and now I've elected to be an S corp. And there are some things associated with that, with paying yourself and distributions and whatever. So, that's probably a different topic, different day.
We're an S corp too, so we have to pay ourselves
Yeah.
like the minimum that would look like market value, so that you don't get flagged, and then
Yeah.
try to do the rest as dividends.
Yeah, yeah, distribution. But again, I have to charge the business as if I'm paying
Mhm.
somebody to go quote and I'm paying somebody to be a site lead. And, I have to put a value on our effectiveness to do a job. Just because we have good equipment and just because we are quick doesn't mean that we have to, undervalue that. A project that, because of our equipment might take somebody a day and a half to 2 days, we're out of there by 2 p.m. Ooh, I can't discount, that just because we're quick or we go to do two jobs in one day. I pretty much have to bid those as if they are a whole day
Mhm.
per job. Or there's a weird thing where there's a job that takes three-quarters of a day or just over half a day, but not enough to do two jobs in that day.
Right.
So yeah, or there's more driving involved, so we're wasting an hour in the morning driving down to Bradenton or something, which we try not to do, but sometimes we just got to do it.
I feel like the quoting part would be so hard, like, to get it would take me forever to get that part right and accurate.
It is tough. And at the beginning, I had, days where I'd get on site and I'd go, whoa, wow, this sucks. I have completely underbid this. And you'll know, like within a couple hours of starting the work, you're like, oh no, this is not good. This is really bad. I haven't yet gone back and said to a customer, like, hey, I screwed up, need more money. When I write that estimate, I write it as a contract per se, and it's like this is what I'm going to do this work for. So if you agree to it, this is what I'm going to do, whether I screwed up or not. Actually, I just heard a quote from Nicky Lauda yesterday before he passed, and he said, I dedicate this to the losers because in winning you feel good, but in losing you learn something. And I was like, yeah, that's 100% right. When you get on site and you've underbid it, and you're not going to forget that
Right.
because everything's going to be terrible. You got to keep spirits up. You got to get it done, and typically it's going to be a lot harder of a day than planned. So nobody likes that. Every once in a while now, less than once a quarter, I have something where I've underbid this. um, and I just tell the customer, I'm like, hey, look, I'm very upfront with them. You got a fantastic deal. I screwed up on this, and you get a great deal. Just write me a good review, and we'll call it square.
Well, so what does your calendar look like? I mean, I'm sure at the beginning you weren't 5 days a week, 6 days a week, were you? Like, how long did it take to get to be full-time, like, for hiring employees? And then how far out's your calendar typically booked?
It fluctuates during the year, and typically whenever we have the worst weather, that's when our demand is the highest.
Mm.
So as things heat up in the summer, the trees start to droop, they start to fill in, and everybody says we need trimming. And then what follows that is, hey, we might have a hurricane, we need trimming, we need removals, we need whatever. So throughout the summer, it's extremely hectic. And then we fall out of that around November because we get holidays, everybody's spending their money on trips, and they're spending their money on gifts, and they typically don't recover until February, March. So I know that, and that's why I don't staff up too much. And we do a little grit and bearing during the summer. That way I don't have a team that I'm constantly turning over or saying like, hey, sorry, we're not, not busy. Don't need you. Goodbye. I've tried to take as much as I can as an ethical approach um, to not hiring on demand, but hiring as we need it, as probably a little late actually, as we desperately need it. We'll bring it. We'll bring somebody else on. Because the last thing I want to do is say, hey, I'm going to hire you, I'm going to pay you, we're going to be doing this many hours a week, and then say, sorry, you're the last one in the door, so you're the first one out. Haven't had to do that yet, and I hope not to.
So how do you manage that during the slow seasons if your employees need X amount of hours?
Yeah, another good question. We have a family business that rents Christmas decorations. And so that takes up a good chunk of time in the slow season where we go and set up these decorations and take them down. And as we've grown that business, um, I've utilized my guys because they're already insured, they're already on payroll, and we could use a little bit extra time. But there's always stuff to be done outside of that. Um, Whenever we get a slow week, we're doing maintenance. We're doing heavy maintenance. We're doing repairs. We're building something, upgrading the site, where we keep all the equipment, something along those lines to where at least 30 hours a week, we're busy. I can keep them, on benefits.
Yeah, I guess with your truck, you could not even renting Christmas decorations, but just hanging people's lights for them on their house.
We do have the equipment. I mean, if it's a big, tall house, our goes to 72 feet. So yeah, we have a very compact setup that we do. Also a separate topic, but yeah, it does require manpower, does require trucks and trailers, so it's a good fit.
So what's your work-life balance like? Is it hard to not be quoting jobs in the evening? Are you good at turning off, turning on?
Well, you know, turning off, turning on, probably not. Not very good at that. I do wear my business on my sleeve, so to speak, and that if things are going poorly, I'm doing poorly. If things are going well, I'm doing well. And I think about it all the time. I think about how to make things better or more efficient or whatever it is. And so it's just a part of me now. Let's see the work-life balance. So I just went through a period right before I had 3 employees, when I had 2 employees, where I was getting up, let's say 6, and then I was taking care of our daughter, then starting work 7:30, something like that, when we had our nanny or our help show up, and then I'd run through the day and hopefully be done with work about 4:30, and then from 4:30 to 8 would be with our daughter again and my wife, and so we would do dinner and whatever. In that time, I'm answering text messages and calls and just getting random stuff out there. And then our daughter would go to bed and I would disappear and I'd be on the computer till 10 p.m., shower, go to bed, back up and at it again. And I went through weeks like that, and it was pretty terrible. But I've done long stints of 100+ hour weeks before. Not unaccustomed to long hours.
Yeah, long hours are a normal part of it, I think, and anyone can do it for a sprint, but when your sprint turns into a marathon of it, it's just not sustainable. You just can't, you just
Right.
give out.
Yep. Burnout is definitely possible, and I do feel a tinge of it every once in a while. But then I stop and I say, okay, hold on. Really, there's no fires to put out that are major. Just dealing with constant stuff that needs to be brought under control, and then we can break through another barrier and move forward. Everything comes in waves, it seems, where we do have everything under control. Money's, everything's good. And then it's like, well, hold on. What would be the next step? Is it another employee? I'm contemplating hiring somebody as a office admin, somebody that can take those calls. Maybe I go on site and I dictate the whole quote, basically how I would write it. And all they have to do is just put that in Jobber and send it to the customer. Things like that. We just get everything under control, figure out what the next step is, hit go on that, and then try and pick up the pieces.
If you were to talk to a 20-year-old who wanted to own their own business one day, What would be your top advice to give someone?
20,
Yeah, or 22 or just someone young, fresh out of school.
fresh out of school, they want to start their own business. When I was looking at starting mine, I had a neighbor, um, just in and around that time. And he owned a lawn care company. And I just noticed it every week because I'm not a lawn stickler, but I do mow twice a week in the summer and I like things to look a decent way. And he would never mow his own lawn. And I'm like, dang. Without even talking to him, I didn't have to ask him. I knew, you don't want to spend all day mowing lawns to come home and do your own. And so when I was looking for a business opportunity, that is something that I kind of took to heart. And I said, it doesn't have to be a true passion of mine per se to really enjoy what I do for work and to be good at it, because then I do get a little bit of work life balance. Of course, I love go karting. I love racing. I love a lot of these things. And I don't do any of it for work. I do it for fun. And so it has been nice to kind of have that separation. And so I would definitely give that advice of saying like, hey, yeah, it's cool. Maybe you want to go travel the country for karting, but probably not. If you want to have a family, you're probably not going to be wanting, something that takes you all over the place. Like, look at what it looks like 5 years from now. Find somebody who's, 5, 10 years ahead of you. What does their life look like? Is that something that you want to be doing? And that's the first thing that I would say. And then, of course, we've said it several times, low overhead. There's several ways of doing it. Some people leverage loans and debt, and I'm not one of those guys. I have one payment. That's it. I have one payment and everything else I bought cash. So I do that. So if we have a slow week or if we have a slow month or whatever, it doesn't matter to me. I keep going. I don't owe anybody anything. I keep the guys going. We keep doing work. And then I figure out whatever it is, that has caused us to be a little slow. I fix that and then we keep trucking. So if you do over leverage yourself, you see that your competition is driving around in a 350 King Ranch lifted dually and all new equipment. It's like, that looks cool, but you can go buy their equipment once the recession starts. You can go buy that truck for 50% off once the recession hits. Like, that's not where I want to be. I don't want to be laying off guys because I over leveraged myself and I've got too many loans. And then you end up just working for the bank. I mean, guys don't understand that they're turning money. They're not building a business. They're building a going out of business. They're having to drop their rates just so they can work enough to make those payments every month. That's like, oh, hold on, that's not what we're doing this for. Our work is too hard and too dangerous just to be paying off a note.
Yeah. What do they say? You can always tell who's skinny dipping when the tide goes out.
Yeah, yeah. Yep. That's that's great. But yeah, it's easy to look around and be like, "Oh gosh, they've got all new everything and they've got this, that, and the other." And it's like, well, you have no idea what their financials look like. And it's probably not good. I think it's 80% of tree businesses go under within the first 3 years. 80%. That's wild. That's just gross mismanagement and likely over leverage.
That's like in restaurant category almost then.
It's bad. Yep. It's either number one or number two for the highest fatalities in any line of work in the country and a high failure rate.
Do you have a set amount, like X amount of months that you keep as cash reserve for the business, or do you pull out most of it?
Like I said, I like to stay cash heavy. I got that from my parents. They never had any debt. And that kind of transferred down to me to where it wasn't even until I was in college that I changed my idea on what credit cards were. I didn't even have a credit card just because I thought that was bad. Just having one was bad. And it's like, well, no, it's not. You can use it. You can leverage it. Yes, you can take loans, but being over leveraged is not good. And so keeping a cash reserve, I just keep as absolutely as much as I can. And that allows me to go buy anything at any time. And also, if we have a slow time, that's what it's there for.
What's been the funnest thing you've gotten to buy with the money so far?
Oh gosh. The man lift is unique. I mean, it is the most expensive thing that we own, but when people see it and they see it in action, they go, "Wow." Um, and it allows us to do substantially more work than somebody who's got a lesser piece of equipment. I'm backlogging tons of video, and I'm going to compile all that and send it off to be edited into advertisements and social media posts and stuff like that. But I'm kind of creating my own little mini series where I go up 72 feet and I do a little video, 360 video of what I can see. And I've got landmarks all over Tampa of, like, okay, there's USF, there's downtown, there's the USAA building. And so it kind of gives you a landmark of where we're at, and it shows you what it looks like above the canopy. Um, all over Tampa. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty neat.
Is there anything that you've learned since you've started that you wish you had learned sooner?
I'm still grappling with this concept of being okay with where I'm at. That's not to say that I'm not pushing forward, all the time and wishing that I was further along than I am, but it's building a business, and that is brick by brick. I don't know how feasible it is to buy a tree business. Probably not, because you'll probably be buying some guys that have a lot of baggage, equipment that's failing, and customers that don't care about you. But it would certainly be a lot easier to buy a business than it would be to build one brick by brick. So if you are going to take that route, you better be prepared. It's not easy. And, if you were to take that analogy further, if you haven't done it before, you have to learn masonry. You have to become really good at it. And if you're not, something's not going to be true or level or square, and you're going to be redoing it. And that road is tough until you get really good at it and you just keep building. And sometimes you lay a lot of bricks, and sometimes just one, or something gets knocked down.
Has it been hard to learn the business operations? Because you could be the best tree trimmer in the world, like the most skilled, but that's completely different than learning how to run and operate a business and pay sales tax and the employee side of things and leading and managing and
Yep. Yeah, it has. And to an extent, it has maybe hampered a little bit of my potential growth along the route, because I try and move quickly enough to where I stub my toe on things and not fall over. When I'm moving forward, I really don't want to. I don't want to fall face first onto something. But I will push far enough to where I just I trip or I stub my toe on something, and then I fix that, learn about it, and keep going. And I'm honest with my guys too. I say, look, I'm a mechanical engineer. It is through me. And that's typically not somebody who's um, very eloquent, somebody who is very emotional. This is typically somebody who is very direct and to the point, and that comes out occasionally. I said, I didn't go to school to be a business owner, but I'm trying to be. And I really want to free up more time to be a better owner and boss. But in the meantime, try and give me as much grace as I try and give you guys, as I do learn this, because I'm teaching you guys stuff. You're learning at the same time I'm learning a whole bunch of other stuff, but I've got nobody to teach it to me and no books. So, I mean, to an extent, yes, there's out there, but not for your own individual path. There's nobody that's going to be able to tell you exactly what to do.
yeah, that's really interesting. So how do you learn? Just figuring it out as you go, or YouTube or books?
Don't watch a lot of YouTube. I don't read a lot of books anymore. I do look for little snippets of information here and there, and I look for people that will talk to me, other business owners. And I try not to pressure them too hard, try not to get too much information, but also I'm upfront with my information, and share as much as I can with them. So hopefully they will reciprocate with me. And really, I mean, in all honesty, it comes down to just faking it in a way of like, I've got this under control. I know how to do all these things. And you just grow into that. So you build this idea of where you want to be, and you make it perceive that you're already there, and then you just you just fill that space. Then you stub your toe, you figure out what's wrong, you fix that, and then you fill the next space.
Well, that's really interesting. That's kind
At
of why
least
I
that's
wanted
what I've.
to do this. I mean, me and Brett kind of got thrown into this, not thrown into it, but we chose to do it, but we didn't have any formal business training or experience, and we just are learning as we go, and we're 10 years in, and we just still feel like there's a mountain load of information that we are still learning every day and having to figure out and try this, implement it, didn't work. Let's try a different angle, see if that works, implement it, adjust. And it feels like whenever we're out to dinner with friends that are business owners, even if the industries are completely different, like a lot of the principles of employee management and business operations and just growth paths are it's all the same no matter what your industry is. And it's just like something clicks and there's just like hours and hours and hours of stuff to talk about of like, oh, what can I learn from you? What have you learned that I haven't learned yet? Okay, maybe I've learned something that you haven't quite figured out, but you're way ahead of us in this area. And it's just, I just love soaking in the knowledge. So I'm like, I'm sure other people would just want to sit in on the conversations too sometimes and just see what is someone else doing? Am I going down a good path? Is there anything from this conversation that I can implement into my own business? Even if it's completely different, the principles are the same.
Yeah, by and large, and that's why you end up with serial entrepreneurs. It's because they've learned the masonry, they've laid the bricks, they built the house, and now they go do another one. Because yeah, there's a lot of overlap. I mean, once you figure out how to hire somebody, once you figure out how to payroll them, once you've learned that. Nobody can take that from you. And so you end up with all these skills and you're like, okay, where do I put them now?
Mhm.
And then into another one.
Yeah.
Let's start another. Gosh, yeah.
Well, thank you for chatting. Is there anything else you think might help someone or any last words?
Oh, I mean, there's definitely other topics. Just spend an hour on each of them, but as a good kind of catch all of some of the stuff I've learned in the past few years, I think that's pretty decent. There's been a lot of things, a lot of toes stubbed, a lot of things that tripped over. Um, but I moved carefully enough to where nothing major, that pops up and I go, wow, that was terrible. I really screwed up there or whatever. But like I said, it's hampered a little bit of growth. So it's just a balance of risk versus reward, which sounds very simple, but until you're in the driver's seat, are you going to be a little bit riskier, or are you going to play it a little bit safer and just grow a little bit slower? So
Yeah.
I don't know. Everybody's different.
Well, thank you very much. I
Everybody-
appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Well, Rachel, I said
Appreciate you
hi.
having me on. I will.